Welcome back to another OMS podcast. I'm here with my two co-hosts,
The Sound Alchemist.
Docile Creature.
and today we are reviewing Magnus the Red, Master of Prospero. We are doing chapters 1 through 6. This is a series where we are going to be reading from, the Primarch series?
Yeah, the Primarch novels. There's 18 of them, so it's about to get good.
And you can read alongside with us, and we can just talk about how awesome or not awesome these books are. And I want to remind you guys that today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to the link down in the description below, download the title, and it's that easy. Go to audible.com/something in the description below to get your free trial, and then you can read alongside with us. So we usually break up each book into two parts. You guys can have time to read it. So let's get into a non-spoilery review of the entire book and whether we would even recommend it to our listeners, because they get a free book. Should they get this one?
I think so. If you like the Thousand Suns, if you like Psychers, if you like brotherly bonds between the Primarchs, this is a good book. There's a lot of action, and there's a lot of kind of retrospective when it comes to Magnus and kind of thinking and pondering on humanity, who should be saved, that kind of thing. I think this is the right book for you.
I would also say that I haven't read the entire thing, but world building wise, this book is really good. It gives you so much description of not just what's going on in the Great Crusade, but also like the Dark Age of Technology, the Age of Strife, like tons of awesome details, and an exploration of basically an alien human planet, which is the Morning Star, which is a big thing.
It also has a nice little mystery element to it that I like, that it's not just like Space Marines fighting Xenos or other Space Marines or something like that. There's like an undertone story that's happening that you're just always like, what's going on there?
Oh, for sure. This is something that we're going to talk about in the review, but you get to see a Space Marine for something other than just a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's what I've experienced. And then obviously you get, I guess this would be spoilery, so I'm not going to say it, because I was going to say you get more than just one Primarch. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. More than one Primarch, yeah.
Two?
Maybe even 3?
Perhaps.
Maybe.
But yeah, so
And it's a pretty short book compared to like other ones, so it doesn't take that long to finish it. Whether you're reading it or audiobooking it, I don't know, listening to it, it's definitely a good listen/read.
yeah. So now let's get into the official review, starting off with the, prologue kind of thing? Mm-hmm. So it starts off with Magnus in, I guess you could say the Horus Heresy era. He's going back to Prospero. The burning of Prospero has already happened, so Leman Russ and his wolves basically ravage the fucking city, and Magnus is just walking through the ruins of the planet of, well, I don't think it's the planet of the sorcerers yet, it's Tisca, right?
I think they still called it the Planet of the Sorcerers.
Yeah. Am I correct in assuming that, from what it sounded like he was saying, this was like his spirit, like he was projecting?
It seemed that way to me.
He was having a conversation with somebody.
Yep.
And like he restored some books or something.
Manuscript or whatever.
Yeah, and they're like, it won't last. Like, why are you doing this? As if like he's not actually there. And maybe mild spoilers for what happens to Magnus, but doesn't Leman Russ like shatter his soul into like shards?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got the feeling that this was a shard, like going back to
yeah.
Prospero to like see what happened after the fact.
Yeah, but it also goes to show the power of Magnus as a psyker, and I think that the prologue really demonstrated that, because you mentioned it. He goes, like, everything is in ruin. The way that he described Tisca is basically just like you know how like we learn about the libraries of Alexandria, and we learn about these giant awesome like places of just knowledge, Athens, Greece, all that kind of stuff. That's what he was describing.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to walk through that and then find a little thing and say, like, I'm going to restore this because I remember from my memory, like, what this, I think it was a play from, like, the Dark Age of Technology. He restores it, and that's when he says, like, why are you doing that? Who do you guys think the figure is? Because he gets confronted by a figure.
Yeah, so I think they're kind of, I mean, they allude that it's like a manifestation, either the spirit or some type of psychic projection of Athrava.
Because he does mention that the sigil is thunderbolts and the eagle head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for a second, I thought, is this a thunder warrior? But no, you guys are saying it's just 1,000 suns.
The form shifts. Doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it's weird because depending on like, I guess who Magnus wants to see and what, like, it could be Zeech too, talking through him through this like manifestation, but at least from what we're kind of given, it's implied that it is one of his 1,000 sons.
Or at least someone that he recognizes.
Yeah.
And what message do you guys remember that this memory gives to Magnus?
So it's basically, he's like, Magnus, you need to remember what happened on the planet of Morningstar, because there's something within this memory of the planet that you need for later on.
And the important thing there, too, is that Magnus talks about the affliction of, I forget what it's called, but basically the 1,000 Sons have this thing that Magnus has been trying to get rid of since he found his legion.
The flesh change?
The flesh
Sounds
change,
right,
there you
yeah.
go. Yep. And he's basically, the guy who visits him is like, you act like you're powerless, but you're here for a reason. Like, you want to save your kids, basically.
Mm-hmm. His battle brothers, his legion.
And the key to that is going to be the Morning Star.
Mm-hmm. So Morningstar is a planet of imperial compliance, and it's dying. Like, this is not a planet that they have to go and conquer. This is not a planet that is rebelling against the Imperium. This is a dying planet, and they're basically going there to provide aid and to allow the citizens to basically get off this planet before it blows up.
The way that they described Morningstar was actually really cool because it's a planet that was created during the golden age of humanity. So it was colonized back before the Emperor was even like, before he made aware that his existence and all that kind of stuff. But there's been a gravitic change?
Yeah, basically the poles are like reversing. There's like
Faster than they should.
Yeah.
And then it's screwing all the magnetic
the
field up
magnetic
and stuff.
fields. There's tornadoes, earthquakes, magnetic storms, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny because at the same time that I was reading this, I got a TikTok that was explaining that the city of Atlantis was supposedly sunk because of a similar magnetic shift that happened. So I was like, oh shit, like this is a warning and all this kind of stuff. And now with all like the global change and just like the catastrophes that are like happening, it made me. The book felt very real. I'm like, oh shit, this.
That's
could
why you
happen to
stopped
us.
reading it.
Yeah. No, I stopped reading it because it was boring. But
Was it though?
well, so okay, so the first couple chapters, I would say they're too descriptive. They give you so much detail, but also vague detail of like what the city looks like, how Magnus is dressed, like all that kind of stuff.
I feel like that's most books.
Mm-hmm.
Like the beginning, they're building a baseline for you to like, for your mental image to build off of. Like they got to describe things, they got to like describe characters in like a non like hectic way, so that when the shit hits the fan, we already have that baseline image in our head.
Yeah.
I think that's most books.
Yeah, but I will say this book was grueling for me to get through. The first like maybe 3 chapters, nothing was sticking. I had to like reread and like take notes because I'm like, damn, why is it so hard?
There's also, they seem to like have a lot of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like right off the bat, like there's a bunch of characters. I'm like, okay, who is this? Who is this?
There's characters that only appear in that beginning of the book and never get mentioned again.
Which is so. Our first glimpse into the Morning Star. So we just read Magnus on Prospero after everything, but then it takes us back.
Yeah, he's remembering.
Yeah, so this is like going into that planet when they're trying to save it, but our first introduction to the planet is, I think, 1,000 Suns, like Marine.
Athava.
Athava, there you go. Oh, he's the one, right?
It's weird though. Now that I think about it, it's like, Magnus, do you remember Morningstar? And he's like, yeah. And then we go from a perspective that isn't Magnus.
Yeah.
But I guess, sure, whatever.
Because I'm like, this is his memories, but we're remembering things that happened where he wasn't even present.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just the way the story needs to be told.
Right.
So,
But
that
regardless,
aside,
1,000 Sons of Thava are excavating some ruins for some lost knowledge about why Morningstar survived the long night, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it's called.
And that's what makes this book so cool, is that it talks about the long night, which is the age of strife.
Is that what it's called? I felt like a Game of Thrones reference.
No, so like you're gonna we get a lot of humanity's history through this book, but yeah, they're trying to find it, and there's a storm that's coming, and that's when we get an introduction to probably a character that we're never gonna see again, the chick, who's like
Vashti, I think. Is that Vashti?
She
comes back.
Yeah, she comes
She
back.
comes back
Yeah.
later. I did like how it showed there's a storm coming. Things are like going crazy. All the humans are going crazy, and then the Thousand Sons are just walking, and they're just like, eh.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just a storm. It's like a gentle breeze to them.
To them.
Well-
Until they get on their storm bird.
Yeah. I feel like the Thousand Sons are like, we gotta get out of here. And then Athava was like, we have to wait for somebody.
So they're waiting for Magnus.
Yeah.
Magnus has gone into the storm, and he hasn't been seen for a while. So they're like, we have to wait for the Primarch to get out. And eventually the storm gets to a point where they can't wait any longer.
Yeah. So the humans leave in their little transport vessels, and that's when you get to see the kinetic psychic energies of the Thousand Sons, which is the first time in our experience of reading this series where sorcery is just in your face.
Yeah.
So they can actually control a fucking transport and be like, no, like, I will redirect you through the storm.
Something I took away from this book is just how powerful the Thousand Sons really are.
For sure.
I actually saw this the opposite way.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, okay, they can move. I don't want to get into spoilers of the second half of the book, but I feel like the psychic powers in 40K eclipse the psychic powers that we see in this book.
Maybe we should shelve this discussion for the second
we'll
part
talk
when it
about
gets
this in
more-
the other one. So
yeah.
stay subscribed, get that Audible credit, read the second half of the book, and then join us.
Yeah, because at the same time, you are a player in 40K that plays psychic armies.
Oh yeah, I played Grey Knights. I tried playing all the psychic stuff that came out for like the Blood Angels. So like I know the different fulmination, pyromancy, biomancy disciplines of psychic arts, and seeing like they called them what, Kine abilities?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, which was kind of like kinetic abilities. I just thought, okay, cool. This is probably something everybody can do. It's no big deal. But seeing you're like, oh, this is crazy. They could do this. I mean, I guess to a human who's never seen psychic abilities, yeah. But once you see what like Zeech can offer, it's a different ball game.
That's interesting, yeah. Because I thought that it was each individual Thousand Sun Battle Brother had a wide variety of tools that they can use. Whereas on the tabletop you don't see that at all.
It's just like
It's like lightning bolt.
Yeah.
warp bullets.
Yeah.
So the Thousand Sun controls the transport, helps the people out, finally get onto the Stormbird when Magnus comes out of like the shadows and
But he doesn't just come out of the shadows. He's got like a swirling vortex of like kinetic energy around him, so that nothing like phases him.
it was described as him walking through the gardens of Tisco while there's just like a fucking tornado going on.
And then I think Athava was like, where have you been? What took you so long? He was like, I had shit to do.
Yeah.
Just like, I was busy. Like, get off my back.
So then they jump on the Stormbird. The Stormbird gets caught in the kinetic field, and that's when you see Magnus's true power. And he can control the ship and just be like, no, just take us home.
Yeah.
And then we see the first glimpse of a city that's not destroyed in Morningstar, but it's described in a way where we are looking at it. It's basically a refugee camp.
Yep.
And that's when we get our first glimpse of another Primarch, Perturabo, and the evacuation structure that he created. Like so efficient, every single ship is moving at the right speed and all that kind of stuff. And that's when you see the difference of Magnus is a psyker. We read Angron. Angron was a conqueror warrior, and then Perturabo, he's like a logistic mastermind. And it goes into detail in describing the process of getting all these refugees out.
Yeah, this many people in this amount of time, etc.
This going into this book, I didn't know much about Magnus. Didn't know much about Perturabo. Perturabo wasn't a like super big character in the first half of this book, and I love him. Like I can't get enough of that guy.
For sure.
Yeah, all the parts he's in are just elevated. I don't know what he does, but it's just like, oh, it's Perturabo. Let me hear him talk.
Yep.
Well, it's his charisma. And when the Magnus and the Thousand Sons land, they go visit him. And we see the interaction between Magnus and Perturabo, and they're like brothers.
Yeah, not just that. They're big bro energy. They look at one another and they go... Dylan. Like, these guys are the guys. Like, you can just tell that, like, when they're together, nothing's gonna happen to them. Like, one's all about psychic energy, the other one is a mastermind with like logistics, and not just that, but like building and machinery and stuff. So it's like, how can anything go wrong?
And that's really what surprised me is like how close these guys were, because they're like complete opposites of each other.
Right, and I think we're probably going to do a before and after of what we thought of Magnus. I never realized how Perturabo was so into knowledge. Like, because in the Codex and in the story in Warhammer 40K, he's seen as like him and his legion get like the grunt work, the shitty work. He sounds, or he's described as loving what he does.
Yeah.
And also the description of him for the first time was pretty awesome. Like a giant, basically a mountain of
a man.
Yeah.
And I think this was a bit of a vacation for him in a way, because instead of getting the shit jobs in the Great Crusade, they kind of took a detour to save this planet, and like this is like what he does, like the logistics and like getting everybody off planet and calculating ways to make that work. I feel like that this is like where he thrives and what he wants to be doing.
Yeah. And I thought that was really cool too, because I think it's this chapter that describes, so it's the Admech, the Thousand Sons, and the Iron Warriors that answered the pleas of help from the planetary governor. And to see Space Marines not in battle, but simply just like
evac.
Yeah. I thought that's crazy and kind of cool. But yeah, who's the main Iron Warrior dude?
Ethava? Oh, Iron Warrior Foryx.
Foryx, yeah.
The guy who's walking around with Ahriman?
Yeah, oh no, I think I'm jumping ahead then.
Because there is a part where Perturabo actually talks to, was it Athrava?
Yeah.
And he's like, Athrava's like, oh man, he knows my name. And they're just like both.
Because he's like, what are you looking at my armor for?
Yeah.
I think this happened in the Angron book, but it happened again where like we do see Space Marines just fangirling whenever there's a Primarch.
Yeah.
And now you have two Primarchs. And yeah, I think it's really cool that they describe both the Primarchs, or because they use brother to refer to each other, Magnus and Perturabo, and then Fava is like, it baffles me to think that these guys come from the same like thing,
because they look super different too. It's not just like they look different from Space Marines. They're
one's red and only has an eye.
Well, and then I even started thinking about what my perception, because we all know Sanguinius and Horus were really good bros. What's his name? Fulgrim and what's
Paris
the name?
Paris Manus.
But never did I think that Magnus and fucking Perturabo would be best buds.
and I love it.
I know. Perturabo, right off the bat, felt so fucking humble. Like, and I think later on, the two legions kind of clash, because there is like a sense of arrogance from the Thousand Sons, and then just like, we're just human, or we're just superhuman and helping humans kind of thing with the Iron Warriors. But yeah, I thought Perturabo was super humble. He'd be somebody that I would want to be friends with, and he would know my name.
Yeah, definitely. And then as they're talking, it's kind of revealed that like, hey, we're on a time crunch. Like, this world is dying, and it has been dying for the past 6 months, to the point where 75% of the population in this world dead.
I know, that's crazy, but it makes sense.
Just based on natural disasters, 3/4 of a world? That's
gonna
insane.
Be us. That's going to be us in a couple of years.
I don't know,
When the
man.
poles switch.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's also when it's you kind of start to see a glimpse of the darker side of Perturabo. When I think this is the chapter when he says that like not everybody's going to make it. Like according to my calculations, only a certain amount of people are going to get off the planet, and that's okay. Like, that's within our margin of success.
I thought that was kind of crazy, but at the same time, he says it in a way where, like, this is just the charisma of the way they wrote the character. You kind of go like, yeah, I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
So many people have already died. So.
But when he said that, I felt like this is still the most they could do. Like, it's not like he's like cutting corners to say, oh, we could get these guys, but no, it's like, hey, based on my calculations, this is the people that we're getting off. Yeah,
and there's actually a part where they describe how once the Iron Warriors arrived, they were able to create all these, like, I guess this procedure within a day. And then Magnus even says, like, oh, we can do it too. And
we can do better, yeah. And he's like, really?
Yeah, so that doubt.
Yeah,
because
the arrogance from Magnus is
Yeah.
just like, okay.
And I think he even says it here that, like, his inability to think himself wrong is going to be, like, his downside.
Yeah. Which we got a little bit in the prelude too, of like Magnus being a little like or throwing a hissy fit of like my legion, and then the ghost or whatever that is following him. Yeah, he's basically saying like, you're here for a reason.
Yeah.
You're not really this. You're victimizing yourself basically.
And this meeting is also when we first see the conflict between the two Primarchs. Like, Perturabo, I didn't really get what was going on, like what the thing was, but Perturabo built something for Magnus, and apparently it was to help look into the warp or something.
Well, that's later on, because they break off for a little bit and then they come back. But you're talking about the thing that Perturabo destroys, right?
Yeah.
The sextant that can help non-psychers look into the warp.
Okay.
I thought that was really cool because the reason that Perturabo gave Magnus for destroying it, because Magnus goes, you knew you could destroy this device, but you waited for me to fucking show up to destroy it in front of me. And then Perturabo basically scolds Magnus and goes like, the Emperor, our father, told us not to look at this shit, and you're over here trying to look at this shit? Like, no, he knows better than we do. So it's almost, like an arrogance of Magnus, and then Perturabo being like, no, these are the rules, and we've got to follow the rules.
Yeah. And it kind of felt like a big brother, little brother moment. Like, Perturabo's like, you're doing this wrong, and I'm going to teach you a lesson by destroying this really fancy toy that I made you.
Yeah.
And because this is after the Council of Nicaea, I would assume.
I don't know. But then it also
It
shows,
should be.
Yeah.
Because there are regulations on what psychic abilities the Thousand Sons can and can't do.
And it felt like the Thousand Sons were like, oh, if I could do this, it'd be great. And it's like, I can't.
But yeah, it also shows that how I guess even in Space Marines are kind of worried about the psychic powers of the Thousand Sons.
Yeah.
In that whole little thing. I don't know at what point, but we get introduced to Ahriman.
Yep. Him and Foryx are walking around helping evacuate, right?
Yeah, Foryx being an Iron Warrior.
Yeah.
Hurting the refugees.
What was your take on Ahriman for the first time?
I don't know. I just thought he was okay. The whole Ahriman and Foryx, I just thought was like another way of showcasing the bond between Perturabo and Magnus.
Because I think they even say it in the book of like, oh, are we just showcasing the bond between our fathers later on?
But they do. They start talking to one another. They start like Ahriman explains more of like how like the warp works and what he can do, and Foryx is like, well, I don't understand it, but I approve because it makes you happy.
Well, it was interesting because like right off the beginning of the conversation, it almost comes to blows. Like the first few things that they're said, like it was interesting to see how that instantly transforms into like a bond or like a friendship.
Yeah, because Ahriman says something to kind of undermine Perturabo, and then that's when the Iron Warrior dude says something to also make...
My dad can beat up your dad.
And then Ahriman gets kind of mad too. But I did like how Ahriman, the Iron Warrior, is basically saying like, these fucking humans are slow. And then Ahriman's like, they're human, relax, bro, be patient. Which was the first time that like the roles were flipped. It's like, oh, now the Thousand Sons is basically saying like chill out to the Iron Warrior. But I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and then that's when we get to some dudes shouting in the crowd.
Yeah, I like how Ahriman's, this is the whole psychic thing, without even trying, his basically spidey senses kick in. It's like something's going on. And then the Iron Warrior's like, he gets ready too. And then Ahriman's like, why are you getting ready? He's like, because you fucking pulled out your gun. And then Ahriman's like, oh shit, I did pull out my gun. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, so this guy starts yelling some shit like "Glory to Shaitan."
Oh yeah, the introduction of the cult, which is pretty big in the entire story. So the planet is being destroyed, and yet there is a faction within the planet that doesn't want to evacuate.
They embrace the apocalypse and they want it to happen.
They're basically a doomsday cult.
They even say like, we dodged this once, like implying when like the emperor first came here, or like whoever it was first colonized this place that was supposed to be destroyed or something.
Yeah.
And they, like, the emperor's angels like stopped it from happening, and it was Shaitan is like pissed at us for doing that, or the Storm Lord, I think they called him.
Yep. So yeah, that is the cult's name, right?
The Sons of Shaitan.
Yeah.
Shaitan.
Yeah. I thought they were cool. They have serpentine iconography. Gold is their thing, because they're also, another word for their god is like the golden god or some shit like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And then what I don't remember is how shit popped off.
So he starts spouting some nonsense, and Ahriman literally like sucks the air out of his lungs so he can't speak.
Yep.
But at the same time, this is also suffocating him.
And you don't think that's badass for psychers?
It is really cool.
It is, but it's like when you can just like snap your fingers and blow somebody up.
But
like,
he wasn't trying to kill him. He's because Forex wanted to kill him.
Oh,
and
for
then and then Arman's like, no, I don't want to kill this guy. I just want to shut him up and like not start a panic and a riot.
Yeah. So this guy is like, oh shit, I can't breathe. I can't do what I'm supposed to. Takes out his pistol and like
He kills himself.
he kills himself. Yeah.
And that's when like other people around the crowd, right?
Killing himself was the signal for the rest of the Sons of Shaitan to start unloading on the refugees.
Yep.
Oh yeah, but before we even get into that, when he was shouting his like whole little sermon thing, I thought it was interesting that Ahriman picked up on the fact that because he's reading minds.
Yeah, yeah.
Ahriman can fucking read minds.
He's just reading everybody. Like the,
Super not powerful.
Yeah, but like he's picking up on the fact that like there's a lot of people that agree. They're cultists, but I thought that was pretty cool. Like the cult itself is pretty powerful on this planet.
oh yeah, for sure. So it's not just like a rogue,
Dude, yeah.
dude. Like a lot of the people feel this way.
Yeah, so then that's when they attack them. Well, the cultists attack the refugees and start killing people, right?
Right.
The description of the Iron Warrior and Ahriman going through and killing like all these guys reminded me of the Space Marine shorts. How it's just so like methodical and like we're gonna do this.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty cool. Like a Space Marine to a human, like the human does not stand a chance. And it's also an example of, because when you play Warhammer 40K, you have a squad of 5 or 10 Astartes, and they can go up against, what is it, a 20 or 30 man cultist group. But like, no, all you need is one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Literally, them just walking through the crowd is like killing people.
Yeah.
Like they're like pushing people, stomping on them. Like it's that much of a difference of like human versus Astarte.
Yeah. And then that's when one of the cultists picks up a rocket launcher.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they should have known they're going up against, Space Marines, so pistols aren't going to do anything.
Yeah, he shoots Ahriman and the Iron Warrior, and then Ahriman creates a fucking force field, which is, again, not powerful.
Not at all. It's just a rocket launcher.
Yeah, right.
And saves both of them. And then after that, I think Ahriman and Perturabo just kind of, or not Perturabo, but the Iron Warrior. Forex, my bad. They kind of just brush it off, no?
Yeah, they just continue their assault.
Well, after they kill everybody, they're kind of just like, okay, we got everybody. Let's continue hurting the refugees.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty, like, cool to be so nonchalant about it.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's all they're used to, war and whatnot.
But then that's also when you see more of interaction between Ahriman and Forex. And Forex calls Ahriman and just basically the Thousand Sons arrogant. Yeah, I like their little back and forth because Ahriman is like, tell me about, where do they come from? Olympus? And then, yeah, that whole thing of like just them getting to know each other and mimicking the relationship and the friendship of Perturabo and Magnus. I thought that was cool. Yeah,
and like them now fighting together kind of strengthens their bond and everything. So now they've seen combat, they protected one another, so they're best buds.
Then that's when Magnus and Perturabo are basically, it goes back to Magnus and Perturabo. Magnus finds out that, oh shit, this guy's in trouble, and that's when they go to help him, right?
Yeah, after everything explodes and the city is like demolished.
Yeah.
I think Perturable's kind of like, don't worry about it. But like Magnus is like, no, I know this guy. I want to go try to save him. He's alive. I know it.
He himself goes, which is like a big deal.
And a bunch of, is this when he sends Ithava?
And the other guy?
Yeah, because Magnus is like, I'm going to take my dudes and go rescue people in the city that got blown up. Ithava, you take a squad, go to this other place, look for this thing. Don't tell anybody about it.
He's like, you'll see an arrow ahead. That's when you know you're at the right spot.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool because one of them, they find a symbol, and then Magnus is like, oh, I've seen this symbol before. It's on Terra. So it turns out that the Morning Star is a planet colonized by the earliest forms of civilization on Earth, and they're looking for this symbol, which is going to give them the answer of why this planet survived the Age of Strife.
Right.
And you guys find out what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, second half of the book has it.
What happened?
Read the book.
Yeah, get that Audible subscription via One Mind Syndicate and get a free credit to read it yourself.
But it was interesting because it showed the kind of the friction between Magnus and Perturabo, because Magnus is like, I want to look for lost knowledge, and Perturabo's like, stop. We have to save people. He's like, no, I want to look for lost knowledge. That's why he sends Ithava on the secret mission, even though he wishes he could be the one doing it.
Yeah. But instead, he goes to the city, and he's like, he sees just destruction everywhere. People looking for family members, people crushed under rubble. And eventually, he goes and finds the psychic presence of the planetary governor.
He like astral projects across the city to try to find his psychic signature or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he sees him inside of a rhino that's been like overturned and covered in rocks and shit.
Yeah.
So he goes in there, he gets him out. He's alive, barely. He's banged up. Everybody else in the rhino's dead. And is this when he noticed, like, he looks behind him, and he notices, like, all the people in the city have, like, kind of rallied to him.
Yeah, they're following him just because he's, like, the giant dude.
And the militia, or the regiment, the guard regiment that's, like, native to the planet comes and, like, finally makes it.
Yeah, so the planetary defense force that's called the Red Dragons. He like, Magnus hears the rumbling of, like, tank treads and stuff like that. So he turns around. He's like, "Oh, good, the militia's here. They could help with the the survivors."
I think the guy in the tank's like, "Hey, is that the planetary governor?"
Yeah,
I thought that was really for like, why do that? Why verify? Like, hey, like, and then
Who's that?
Yeah.
And then they open fire, and I think that's the end of the 6th, right?
I think
it's the end
battle.
of 5.
Yeah, the
because
battle.
the battle
is
is the 6th, and that's when Magnus takes the first time he's actually been hurt.
And it's a Bane blade.
He takes a last cannon shot from a Bane blade to the chest.
Yep.
And he lives.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's hurt, but like he looks at himself with his gaping wound, and like he starts healing himself psychically. That's cool. That's strong. I got to admit, taking a Bane blade last cannon shot to the chest and healing that. Okay, like
I'm glad that was able to impress you.
Anybody else, I would have been like, they're dead. That's a Bane blade shot to the chest. But yeah, he starts healing himself, and he's thinking, like, this is the first time I've legit been hurt.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's like, every time I fought with my 1,000 Sons, I've like gotten scratches, and like I bled a little bit to show them that I'm bleeding with my...
He says he's allowed himself to get hurt to show that he's human or like close to it.
Right. To give like his warriors like, oh no, our Primarch's bleeding, we got to fight harder.
Yep.
But like, this is him allowing himself to get hurt. This is the first time he's actually been hurt.
Yeah. And then also that's when basically the cultist uprising begins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is still kind of weird, and I know I'm probably going to get more information in part 2, but like, why kill refugees? Like, it doesn't make sense.
You'll learn more.
Yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah.
And the whole thing too, it's like, oh shit, like this is the planetary governor that everybody loves. Why did they want to make sure that he's dead?
Yeah.
So you'll get to that into the second part. But before that, you see Magnus go, I wouldn't say a rampage, because yeah, he's pissed, but he's also doing everything systematically. He's turning tanks against each other, having the crew members fire on their own. I think there's one point where he takes a tank and crumbles it into like a basketball-sized ball of just metal.
Super weak stuff, like not even that powerful at all.
I mean, he is the master of sorcerers, right?
And then when he gets to the Bane blade, he picks it up and just dismantles it to the screw, where he's like, if an Adeptus Mechanicus saw this, they could reassemble it.
I forget what movie, but they did something similar where like it's like a truck passing by, and then it like
Is it Magneto?
Something like that.
so.
Yeah.
X-Men or something?
Yeah.
Just completely shatters it and then puts it back together.
Yeah.
But I thought of that when I read that. I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, the Magneto scene.
Yeah, and then he's like boiling people's blood and stuff like that. And then he gets one of the, I think the main guy, was it? The one that asked if that was a planetary governor? And he like starts interrogating him.
I don't think I've gotten there.
I'm pretty sure that's the part, ain't it?
I don't remember.
No. Because the guy's like talking about like who Shaitan is, and it's like,
Oh, yeah, I haven't gotten there then.
ah, okay. Well, you guys will get to that. But yeah, that's where we'll be cutting it off today.
Yeah. So make sure to use the Audible subscription down in the comments or down in the description below so that you guys can read alongside with us. Tell your friends that we're doing a little Warhammer 40K book club. We do this every week. So if you guys have any suggestions for not just the Primarch series, but any other books that you guys would like us to read, let us know in the comment section below. And I hope you guys are enjoying this.
Let's do Dune next.
Dune?
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's any way we can make this more interactive with you guys, just let us know.
Yeah, so let's keep reading together. Oh man, I gotta say, Magnus, he turned it up a notch.
Super weak.
No,
not even,
I
not even
agree.
that good.
Anything that happened before that week, but Magnus, that's 2 thumbs up from me. But yeah, that's all we got for today. Keep liking, keep commenting, subscribe, share, watch the other OMS channels. And yeah, this has been The Sound Alchemist.
Gershwan.
Docile creature.
And we are out of here.
Oh, if you could put my freedom